Designed by Student Government's Tech Ministry to promote an inclusive and informed environment among Halifax West and its community.
Warriors Live is a student-run news network and broadcast team that shines a spotlight on valuable information while including the student body and catching their interests.
Warriors Live in Tech brings you all the news on what's going on in our school.
We work as a team while we're independent. We're organized while we are creative. We are technicians, editors, journalists, and reporters. We are Warriors Live and Tech.
Come join us, have fun, and make headlines.
Point you feel like the addressed subject is out of your comfort zone, please alert your teacher to be excused from the session and head to the library or youth health center. Make sure to come back at the end of the session to check in with your teacher.
There we go. Good morning, everyone. Hello. I'm here to talk about my work in resilience and my work with people over the last 25 years. So I've had the good fortune to go from 6, 7-year-olds all the way up to 95-year-olds. These days, I predominantly work with athletes. So I still do some stuff in high performance sport, and I do some work in resilience. And I'm going to talk about that today. It's a new word, probably a word that you've heard a lot. We're going to get some feedback here in a second. But one of the things I'm going to have to ask you to do is trust me, because we're going to do a couple activities today. Anyone up for some activities today? All right, cool, good. So we're going to try some of the stuff that I've done in past. I have the good fortune to do a lot of presenting. So in the last 3 months, I've been in San Francisco at Berkeley. I presented there. New Orleans, Toronto, Germany, got to go there. Berlin was cool. Got to see the wall, and because the anniversary was just a while ago, so that was pretty cool. So I'll get you to, I gotta get some help from the crew at the back who've been awesome, the tech group. I'll get you to flick the first slide. I'm gonna use a bit of slides just to guide me, because sometimes I get rambling and off on tangents. Actually, can we just go back up? Back up. Boop, there. So I just wanted to, I don't know if you can see this, but I'll read it for you. I'll give you my thought bubble before I came in here when I was sitting in my car. My thought bubble was, this is going to be bad. They're going to regret having me. I'm not prepared. And this information will not resonate with this crowd. Even though my first degree is education, I was supposed to teach high school math and physical education. Quite a combo, eh? So here's what I'll get you to do. I'll just get you to sit up straight, put your hands on your thighs. There you go. Very good. And what I'll get you to do is just start by breathing in through your nose and then nice and slow out through your mouth. There you go. Sounds like we're getting relaxed here in the front row. Awesome. Good. Keep that going in through the nose and out through the mouth. Good. Let's keep that in through the nose, out through the mouth. Good. Keep that going. Good, nice and slow. If your mind's wandering, that's okay. Going, who is this guy? What the heck is he doing? That's normal. Just keep the breathing. Feel the breath go across your nose as it comes in, and feel it go across your tongue as it comes out. Now what I'll get you to do as you keep the breathing, I just want you to feel your fingertips on your thighs. So whenever your mind starts to wander, that's okay. I want you to just bring it back to your fingers and how they feel sitting on your thighs. Keep the breathing in through your nose, out through your mouth. Bring your attention back to your hands on your thighs. Relax your shoulders. Great. Thanks for doing that with me. So now you've all done mindfulness. Was it that complicated? No. People in our field have a tendency to make it extremely complicated, and then it has to be this, you're in a separate room, and we have to do a mindfulness class. It's a 6-week program. That's about it. I'll tell you what my experience is when I started doing more mindfulness in my own routine. I'll get you to click that next bubble for me. This is what I've experienced with actually doing the mindfulness that I do. They're going to love me, of course, right? Front row? Gonna love me? Yeah, oh yeah. I presented on this hundreds of times. This is all new to them, and I'm well researched. So I'm the resiliency guy standing here who's had panic attacks, couldn't get out of bed, the whole story. So I've been through it all, yet still trying to be a high achiever in my field, in my life, and so forth. So I had the good fortune of going to a retreat in California for 10 days, and it was kind of a medical / retreat. And this is where I first got really exposed to doing mindfulness, and it really helped me. And I did start to notice this psychological shift that can happen with just doing some mindfulness, which is really, because I'm an exercise physiologist, not psychologist. So I predominantly work with the physiological system, but what I've come to realize is just that deep breathing can decrease the feelings of anxiety, can decrease those, where you start to get heightened and so forth. Is mindfulness sent from the gods? No. It's just another skill, another tool in the toolbox that you can use on a day-to-day basis to what we've called in the Q Life, which is a project that I'm doing, is charge your battery, if we use this battery analogy for our own resilience. So it's just something that you can do. It's not something that you have to do, but it's an opportunity to kind of, if you're having those feelings of overwhelmness or what have you, a simple skill that you can do. We did a project about 4 years ago with 500 healthcare workers, and we just did some, we called it mindful hydration. So when you drink your water, whenever you drink your coffee, your water, what have you, your Gatorade, just take the time to be mindful. And what we found was, because I had them journaling, is this kind of stuff kept coming up in the journals. I haven't slept through the night in the last week. I slept through the night. I had dry mouth from the medication I was taking. It's gone. I had stomach problems. It's cleared up substantially. Just from doing 8 to 10 minutes of mindfulness a day. And what we found is you could actually break it up. It didn't have to be 8 to 10 minutes sustained if you're using, anyone use any of the mindfulness apps? Oh, okay, so there's great mindfulness apps that you can use that are free, or you can just stop, put your hands on your thighs. When you go to drink your water, take the time to do about, 30, 60 seconds of deep breathing, and it can have a nice effect. Make sense? Great. Get you to flip for me. So now we're going to talk about resilience. How many people have heard that word? Great. So for humans, it's been around since 1984. We've started using this word resilience. And here's what I'm going to ask you to do. With the 3 or 4 people around you, here's the interactive portion, I'd like you to start to discuss. If you have a piece of paper, great. If not, that's cool. Someone's going to play the memory game. I'd like you to quickly discuss the words you associate with resilience. Okay? So when I say go ahead, you're going to discuss with the people around you what are some words, behaviors, traits, characteristics. When you say that person's really resilient or that group is really resilient, what are the words that you associate with that? And grow. Toughness. So we got a couple up here. Keep going. Perseverance, toughness, not giving up. Strength, persistence. Determination, power. Great. What's one word? Strength. We got 2 for strength. Awesome. Power. Great. We've got 2 for power. Confidence. This man's got confidence, and yes. Strong. Great. We heard strength again. Determination. Absolutely. Team here in the middle. Any other words? No. That's okay. You don't have to have a word. Shout them out. Ambitious? Yeah, great. Ambitious. Anything over here? Power? Great. We got power again. Team? No. Same words. Great. Stability. What's that? Keep going. Any other words that people just start throwing them out loud? What is it? Balance. Very good. Thank you. Okay, great. Thanks for that. Awesome. Very, very common words. I hear them from CEOs because I do this presentation with big CEOs. I do it with Olympic level athletes. I do it with Olympic level coaches. I do it with people who clean the floors, so 30 regular employees in, and we talk about it. And there is some commonality that we hear. Can I get you to click the slide for me? Right. So if you start to listen for the word, you're going to hear it a ton. And it's used in all kinds of different contexts. And it goes from the Olympic level athlete all the way to the war-torn kid. And I get the good fortune of doing research in this world and with a guy here in Halifax who's awesome. He travels all over the world working with kids in war-torn areas, what keeps them resilient, what makes them resilient. and how do we grow from that? Because what we got to remember is life doesn't get any easier. It's just we can get stronger and more resilient. Because, like I said, the Q Life is a program that I've been doing at a university, which is going to other universities. And we try to figure out how do we measure resilience and how do we grow it. And one of the videos that I shot that's in the program or in the experience is and I'm sure some of the teachers can probably attest to this, the stress that you have now, you kind of laugh at in 3 or 4 years. You're like, oh my God, I can't believe that stressed me out. But now you have a new set of stress. So it's like being in first year, you're going, oh my gosh, can't do this. But then when you're in your 4th year or you're in grade 12, you go, I can't believe that stressed me out. But you've got a new set. So it's not like the inbox is ever empty. It's always going to be full with stuff, and you've always kind of got to deal with it. And that's what I've come to realize in life. So there's just kind of a new set of how we do it. One of the things that I find interesting these days is most people go right to the individual skills. Strong, powerful, determined, these kind of things. And that's characteristic of resilient people. But what I've come to recognize for the kids on this side, it's fine to say have more grit, but when there's bombs dropping around you and you have no clean water, it's not as simple as have more grit. And I'm sure there's probably some people in the room who experience that. So your environment also drives your resilience. So Mark DeYoung, who's an athlete that I work with, he's got great resilience, but he also has got a great team around him, a great family. He gets his needs met. He's treated fairly. He has accountability. He's got structure in his life. Because those things also play a role in your resiliency. Does that make sense? Your environment drives your behavior. So if you're sitting in a room with a bag of chips and you're trying to lose weight and that bag of chips is there for 3 days, you're going to eat chips. Sorry. So your environment drives your behavior. If you're not being treated fairly in a class, in an environment, you can be the most resilient people, but a majority of people their resiliency is going to drop. So what you have to figure out is there a way that I can get into an environment that I'm fairly treated? And then also what I do, to let you know behind the scenes, is I usually work with organizations to how do we build a resilient environment. So this word you're going to hear it on TSN, you're going to hear it on CNN, you're going to hear it in the hallways, you're going to hear it from all kinds of people. Could we do a flick with the, thanks. Great, so hold there. I don't know if you can see this or not, but one is 35 Olympic level coaches, one is CEOs, and one is regular people. Not a great term, but we'll call them regular people. Non-Olympic athletes, non-CEOs. Can you tell which one is the Olympic level coaches? I don't know if you can see that. Which one do you think it is? White? Okay. Bottom right, here we go. Yes. So this is our 35 Olympic level coaches, the workshop that I did with them. But what I'd like you to notice is, do you see any of your words in there? And do you see some of the commonalities? So we're seeing determination come up. You guys said that one. Bounce back, optimism, toughness. Again, though, a lot of people see it as this individual skill versus what am I looking for in my environment to also be resilient. Great, I'll get you to flick to the next one. Click. Oh, tech teams must be checking their phones. Can I get you to click the slide, please? Thank you. Thank you, appreciate it. So the way that I've seen resilience is the analogy of a battery. I'm assuming most people in the room have a cell phone, right? So resiliency isn't where you kind of build it up, you do the skill set, you learn from Darren, you learn from psychologists, you learn from all these people, and now you're super resilient. I only wish it could be that simple for the people that I've worked with and myself. So my purpose in life is to help people without expectations. So what I've come to recognize is when I have a day that I've helped a lot of people, or feel like I've helped a lot of people, I'm pretty jacked up at the end of the day. I'm pumped, and I'm pumped to start my next day. And I know in grade 12, grade 11, grade 10, it's kind of hard to figure out what your purpose is, but that's just one thing you can start to think about on a day-to-day basis. if you're kind of pumped up at the end of the day or you're excited about the next day, just kind of self-reflect on what did I do that day that maybe led to that. And that's one way that I work with people to start to try to figure out their purpose. So if I had 3 math classes today and I was super stoked, maybe there's something there. Or I did this and I'm super stoked and pumped up, then that might be important. So I get emails pretty regularly from the students in the program, and they say really nice things, and that kind of boosts my battery. And it gives me a really good boost in my battery, so that's when I know, okay, this is probably related to my purpose. There's also things that drain our battery. Has anyone experienced on a day-to-day basis what drains their battery? Right, kind of makes you feel I'm exhausted. And that's not just physical exhaustion, not just gym class, take a lap. It's actually other things that can drain your battery. So now this word comes in about self-awareness. And starting to become aware to know what actually drains my battery. And figuring that out becomes not an epiphany for people, but an awakening to start to recognize what drains my battery and what gets my battery up. So knowing when you're at a 4 out of 10 and what things do I need to get back to a 6 out of 10, or what charges do I need to do to get a charge back in my battery is pretty important. Because what I'm trying to help people avoid, and what I try to avoid, is when we get the black screen and it's shutting down. Right? I had that on my cell phone this morning, actually, because the plug wasn't working. So I wasn't getting a good charge. I won't ask you to put your hand up, but like I've said at the start, I'm a pretty open book. I've had it where my battery was fully gone. Father-in-law passed away. Mark didn't hit an Olympic medal. I was paid a lot of money to help him win that. Had some non-successes in my business and some other things, and boom, kind of hit rock bottom. So I let myself, about 6-7 years ago, drain my battery. So now I'm quite aware of when I'm sitting at 3 out of 10 or 2 out of 10 and what I need to do to bring it back. And that's pretty critical. Not to say that if you're 0 out of 10 you can't come back, because I'm standing here today. But ideally, we start to become more aware and say, where am I at and how do I get back? So one is mindfulness. I use physical activity. So I use hockey and running. I eat well. I stay hydrated. I notice that my anxiety starts to creep up when I'm not hydrated. How do you know when you're dehydrated? You get a headache? Yep. What's that? Same thing? Yep. Absolutely. So there's a couple tells. The other one is your pee is yellow. Pretty simple one. Yep. I know. So I got to go through Australia and New Zealand on a professional development trip, just like most of the teachers here get to do the PD and through Australia and New Zealand, right? Yeah. So I went to some sports centers, and what they had on the back of all the urinals was, what does your pee look like, which tells you your dehydration level for the athletes. It's a pretty crude way. Now, of course, if you're taking a vitamin or a medication that changes the color of your urine, that can have an effect. But they kind of go hand in hand. So you want to keep it white. You never thought I was going to talk about pee today, did you? So yes, hydration is actually really important. You know that about 70% of the body is water. So you're right. We get headaches. We get confusion. We get fatigue. We get all kinds of problems. So hydration is important. So again, using this battery analogy has seemed to resonate with the students that I've worked with. So 2 of the universities we work with, they're actually going to make the Q-Life part of not part of it, but they'll put it out to you in July in grade 12 in the near future. So they're going to try to give you some life skills prior to coming to university if that's what you're going to do. And we're looking at how do we do this in grade 12. So the earlier we figure out, the better. Does the battery analogy make sense? What level do you think you're at right now? Sorry to put you on the spot. 8 out of 10? Great. Charged up. Do you know what caused that charge? Sorry to put you on the spot again. Great. Yes. How many people got over 8 hours of sleep last night? Oh. Right. So in Canada, in 1984, we averaged about 8.2. Currently, we average about 6.8. So once we drop below 7, the risk of feelings of anxiety and depression go up substantially. Are there people that can do less than 7 hours and survive? Yup. But the majority of the population, when you drop below that, you're going to increase the risk of mental health stuff. So, but how do I do it, Darren? Well, that's another whole life counseling session. How do I fit it all in? Well, your health is your wealth. And I can stand here and say that, but you'll go home tonight and sleep 6 hours again, I get it. But with this decrease in sleep in our society today, now we've seen this proliferation of what drug? Right, caffeine. So we're plowing ourselves with caffeine, and then it becomes this vicious cycle. And now we know in the last 3 years, the half-life of caffeine is a lot longer than we thought. So it used to be have caffeine before lunch, right? And then you'll have a good sleep. Well, actually, it's 24 hours. So if you're a responder to caffeine, it's going to affect your sleep. So if you're struggling and you say want to improve your sleep, and I've had a lot of people with that, the first step is maybe to eliminate caffeine. And if people go, I can't do that, then that's a whole nother behavioral change story that I have to work with you on. But yeah, sleep is essential. It's another one. And I heard a great presenter down in the US that's all he studies is recovery for athletes and sleep. He said you can take everything, all the recovery tools you want, massage, everything, and sleep trumps that by 10. But it's epidemic in today's society. So yes, you guys should be averaging about 10 hours actually at your age, because growth hormones released when you sleep. The synovial fluid releases from your stem of your brain and covers your head or covers your brain and actually builds the motor patterns and what you've learned that day. And you're probably not going to like this, but a lot of it happens between 10 and 12 at night. Because if we wait till 12 or 1 to go to bed and we sleep till 9, I know you don't do that, but in the summer, it's not as effective as getting to bed earlier because circadian rhythms, you start to wake up even though you're not awake. So yes, I sound like your father up here, but that's life. So your sleep is actually critical. Haven't anyone heard of the 10,000 hour rule? 10,000 hours, you can become an Olympic level athlete? Yeah. Actually, if you read the research, the one that trumped that was sleep. So the people who were becoming the great violinists and pianists were averaging 10.8 hours of sleep a night. So yeah, it's actually critical. Can I get you to flick the slide for me? So one of the best analogies I heard is we're trying to make you Superman, Superwoman, super person, when actually we're trying to make you more like super bat person. So you can still get hurt, but you have the powers to come back. And again, a lot of people think of these resilient people that they can take on anything and they just can't be hurt. That's not the case. But we want to be able to develop the superpowers to bring you back. That's the critical piece. Great, I'll get you to flick again for me. Great. This is a pretty classic curve that we use in sports science. So one of the things that I ask you to think about, and I ask a lot of people to think about, if at the top of that curve is where we're optimally performing, and I won't pick you out today, but what I'd like you to start to think about in the future is, what is me optimally performing? I have some people in my profession who like that, who don't like that, but I just want you to think about, what does 8 out of 10, 9 out of 10 look like for me? And then start to get an image of what is that? Because then what we're going to do is, what does it look like when I'm coming down the curve, when I'm 6 out of 10, when I'm 4 out of 10, when I'm 2 out of 10, and I only have 2 bars left on my phone? What does that actually look like? Because that's part of this self-awareness. I'm a pretty open, blunt speaker. I'll give you the method behind the madness. And what brings me back to the top? Because one thing to understand is there's no such thing as good stress and bad stress. Stress is actually good. What drives us to be better and to live a Q life or to live a flourishing life. Anyone heard of cortisol? Yeah, cortisol is actually a good hormone. It's not just a bad hormone. It's released when we're under stress. It goes to the brain. It actually enhances and builds our brain and so forth. It's when we find ourselves constantly soaked with cortisol when we get into problems. So when we're constantly stressed, that's when we can actually see brain damage. We all probably have a few friends like that, right? So they're constantly soaked in cortisol. We can actually do damage to the brain, but the good thing, just like every other muscle in the body, you can actually bring it back and see this neuroplasticity. You can grow your brain. You can do all kinds of cool things, which increases your creativity, increases your happiness. So what I want you to think about in the future is, what do I actually look like when I'm 8 or 9 out of 10? What do I look like when I'm 4? What am I going to do to get myself back up to an 8? Those are pretty critical, and some of the first things that I look at when I work with people is becoming aware of what does it actually look like. Because don't forget, there's no such thing as work-life balance. There's no such thing as school-life balance. It's life. You can't you maybe not had a fight this morning with your guardian, your mom, your dad, what have you, and then come here and go turn it off and everything's good now. That doesn't work that way. So it's life. So we have to figure out, how do we make it all work together? Great, can I get you to flip on that one? And keep flipping, cool. And actually we'll do all 4. So I don't want to get too scientific on you, but I just want to give you how I've been studying resiliency. The reason I did it at the university level, and the reason that I said to my niece, Caroline Steves, who goes to the school, I said, yeah, sure, I'll come in and speak. Because what I found is the earlier that you can learn this, unfortunately I waited till about 40 to figure it out, is the better. And it doesn't mean that you have to sit and do this philosophical course and figure out what's my purpose, what's my vision, what's my values. But what stood out to me over the last 2 years with the Q Life at Dalhousie University and at Acadia is most of the messages that I've been getting back from the students unsolicited was, wow, man, once I figured out kind of what's my purpose and I did that vision and values stuff and then figured out all the little battery charges, it's made a huge difference. And this was going from first-year students, so close to your age, all the way up to PhD. I got a 4-page letter from a PhD student saying, wow, this has really helped. And it's not profound stuff. It's the stuff we're talking about today. So we've talked a little bit about the self-awareness charge. What gets my battery down? What gets it up? So becoming aware of that. The foundational charges, which I believe is that purpose, vision, values. And when you figure that out, it really does help. You start to learn why certain relationships don't work and why other relationships do work with your friends, with your family, eventually with your coworkers, all that kind of stuff. I'm starting to call it climate control charges, which has been kind of left behind, and that's the environmental stuff. So do you have structure in your life? Are you accountable to someone? Are your basic needs met? And we certainly probably know people in your school and in your community where it's pretty hard to be resilient if you don't have a meal in the morning. You can say, oh, you just need to do mindfulness and be physically active and be self-compassion. Well, if you have to work 3 jobs to pay for the family at home and be part of contributing, it's not quite that simple. The power charges are your classic ones, which we're talking about, is physical activity, nutrition, mindfulness, self-compassion, cognitive spyware, practicing acceptance, all that fun stuff. Then the self-appraisal, which I'll show you in a second, which is, I'm a pretty big fan of journal and logging. You don't have to journal, you don't have to log, but it's another tool in the toolbox, it's another way to charge your battery. And again, going back to the Q Life, because I've put a couple thousand students through it, I think the one other thing that stood out for me is how many people said, I thought journaling was stupid. I don't think I'll ever stop it again. Because now they're doing it, and they found that it helps decompress their day, helps them figure stuff out. Can I get you to click the slide for me? Oop, on their phone again. Just kidding. Figuring out your personality and knowing how you respond emotionally. So actually starting to become that third level communicator going, when do I actually get angry? And what sparks my anger? What are some things that I do in relationships that are important to me that brings anger back? That's when you start to become emotionally aware, your emotional cues go up. So what are the triggers that I'm doing, and how do I stop that? Self-confidence and mojo. So these are some things that we talk about as this self-awareness. But if you take anything away today, think about what gets my battery down, what gets it up, and you go to that. Because one of the number one attributes of resilient people is problem solving. So the faster you can get into problem solving mode, and I'm not saying grief isn't good, and we all go through that, but the quicker you can move to, okay, this happened, now what am I going to do about it? That's really important. Great, can I get you to click again? Foundation, purpose, vision, values. Again, the simple thing I'd like you to take away here is what gets my juices flowing. And that's where you'll start to probably figure this out over the next 4 or 5 years. And that might drive your career. It might drive your relationships. It might drive a lot of stuff when you start to figure out what makes me feel like I'm thriving. The values one I won't go too deep into, but what I want you to also start to think about is when a relationship is going sour, or you're like, I just don't click with this person, what I'd like you to start to think about is what do they value and maybe where the conflict is. And that really helped me with the relationships that I was in, and helped depersonalize it. So it's not you personally don't like me. It's actually we just don't value the same thing. Great, can I get you to click? Climate control, we talked a little bit about it. What's your support network? Do you have someone that you can talk to? I mean, adults get all eye-rolly when I say this, but have you actually had a conversation with your friend and say, is it okay if I call you when I'm not feeling good? Can we have a deeper conversation? So actually have adults talk to their friends about that and say, you know what, I'm at a 4 out of 10, I'm at a 2 out of 10, I need your help. And we do know that social support networks are extremely important. Accountability, being treated fairly, and we've talked a little bit about the financial health, which is related to basic needs. So once your basic needs are met, then you're more likely to be resilient. Can I get you to click again? The power charges, I'll get you to click again. We talked a lot about that. The journaling and logging, I'll get you to do one more click for me. And one more, sorry. Yeah, so you're not going to be able to see this, but this is the journal that we developed for the Q Life. And the cool thing is, it's just yes or no. So do you feel you were charged for your day? Did you move towards your vision? Are you excited about tomorrow? Did you have the energy you needed for today? Did you eat 5 or more fruits and vegetables? Only 28% of Nova Scotians do that. Did you get 7 hours of restful sleep? Were you physically active? And what we found was the more yeses to this, the higher the starting mood. So we asked them their mood. Then we asked them these 10 questions. And the more no's they had, the more crappy they felt. The more yeses, the better they felt. One thing that I do with people is create your own log. So you can kind of figure out what is the Q Life for you. And it's just yes or no. So I've just built an app with a guy who knows how to do that. I don't. And so we'll have it out soon. And that's all it is. It's just flip right, flip left. There's other apps like that, but ours is positive, so it's yes or no. And we're going to help people, and that's part of your self-awareness. So you can actually look back and say, oh, there's a relationship when I have 2 of these, and I'm on a 7 days in a row, that my battery's at a 2 out of 10. So this is the logging aspect, and that comes from my high-performance sport world. We've seen the same thing transpire. Can I get you to click again? I think I'm getting close. So then what I encourage people to do is create your own individual battery. So if you're starting to kind of click with this, what I'm asking you to do is, it's not one formula to say, here's how you be resilient. It's actually figuring out what resonates with you, what motivates you. So again, we did a quick mindfulness activity, and you can say, wow, I wouldn't do that on a regular basis. Then don't put it into your battery. Figure out the ones that give you a charge and the ones that you go back to. I probably have had this conversation 10 times in the last 2 months. I'll tell people the story, and they go, oh, I used to journal. That really did help. I said, you know you can start it tomorrow. right? You can bring it back. So it's knowing what these things are. I certainly encourage people to try to figure out some of those foundational ones, so you kind of know what things that I do that gives my battery a real big juice up. What can kind of let plug in overnight and really does help. Great, I'll get you to click. So again, figuring out what's my low charge. So do people have to work a job outside of school to say help support the family? Are they dealing with maybe a separation at their home? So it's almost you're starting 4 to 10 every time you come to school. Because remember, it's life. It's not work life, school life. Piling on with the homework, even though all the research says homework doesn't do anything. Just kidding. You're treated unfairly, and we certainly are working on that, but we haven't gotten all the way. And I saw some great signs outside around diversity and respect and so forth. It's awesome. And then my wife's a school teacher. So she teaches in elementary. She's taught in some inner city here in the city. And how many times has she been dealing with a difficult child and going, what's going on? And then find out, hasn't eaten in 3 days. How the heck do you be resilient and pay attention and not be a goofball in class when you're starving? So figuring that out and recognizing what causes that low charge and how do we get it. I'll get you to click. Thank you. And just go back one. Yeah, so high charge. Think about what gets me at a high charge where I feel good at the end of the day, or I feel like I had, even though I'm maybe at a 4 to 10 or 3 out of 10 at the end of the day, what made that happen? And how do I get back up? Great, next one, sorry. So like I said, I have the good fortune of still working in high performance sport, and sport resonates with some people and doesn't resonate with other people. It obviously helps build teamwork, but that's Katie Vinson. She's a canoeer going to Tokyo. So I had the good fortune of going to Rio with Mark. I'll be going to Tokyo with them. She's won 6 world championships. We have a lot of good, lengthy conversations on this topic because she's in kinesiology, the study of human movement and human performance. I have the good fortune of working in Florida 8 weeks a year. So I'll be there next week. She came running up with her canoe. If you don't know canoe, it's here, and it's like such. So they do about 25 hours a week out on the water, about 250 kilometers. She came running up and said, look what I did. And that's the Japanese symbol for resilience, because the Olympics is in Rio. And the reason she did that is she said, whenever I'm not feeling it and basically my battery's low, is she'll take a look at the handle and think about what keeps me resilient, why am I doing this, what's my purpose, those kind of things. And she did that on her own, obviously the Japanese symbol, because the Olympics are in Tokyo. And I have another athlete going through a very difficult time. I've been calling her on a weekly basis. She's the 11-time world champion, and she had a positive doping test. And they're not sure why. They're trying to figure it out. And canoe is in the Olympics for the first time ever. And she's 26. She's been doing canoeing her whole life. She might not be able to go because of that. And this is where you start to see the environment, the parents support, us supporting. Does she have a psychologist that she can talk to? And all these types of things are in place to try to keep her at least at a 3 or 4 to 10 rather than 0, because her purpose kind of got knocked. So it's going to be difficult. Can I get you to click? Be too bad. So are you guys allowed to have phones in school? All right. So I got to do a TED Talk last year, and I decided to do it on my dog. That's my dog. His original name was Arnold, but we switched it to Rudy. So I would ask you to go to YouTube at some point and watch, but I'll give you the high notes. Just because if we hit 3,000 views, Rudy gets a treat. So he's pretty pumped. I was going to bring him in. because he comes onto the TED Talk stage. But we got Rudy. Rudy was a shelter dog, so he was a rescue. And he walked the streets of Cape Breton by himself for 4 weeks. And then Cape Breton they don't keep the dogs for long term. So they shipped him down to Halifax because it's like a non-kill shelter or what have you. So when he came, there was a dog that had a disease called parvo, which spreads quite quickly. So Rudy had to go into quarantine for 6 weeks. And so he had to sit in a cell by himself again for 6 weeks. And so we went over, and we were actually going to get a different dog. And it didn't like other dogs, but we were going to try to train it. And Arnold, they brought out to show us how the other dog responded to dogs. So this dog was really cute, and then all of a sudden, Rudy came out, and he wanted to play, and this dog just was vicious and wanted to attack Rudy, and he just wanted to play. It was hilarious. So my wife said, well, what about him? And I said, no, he's too hyper. Unfortunately, we brought our niece, who actually, like I said, goes to school here. This was almost 8 years ago. Caroline over, and the dog didn't like children either. And we just felt it was too much. It was too hard to train. And, a lot of tears shed, grief, because we had kind of almost started to bond with this other dog. So they sent an email with him and said, well, what about Arnold? So we debated and decided to get Arnold. But, of course, the first thing we had to do was change the name to Rudy. If you've seen the movie, because Rudy's just very small with short legs. Feel free to look up the movie Rudy, and you'll understand why we named him that. So we brought him home, and this experience of having this dog started to grow on me. So quite quickly, we made him a therapy dog, because we realized, when I put the slide up, I saw a lot of smiles, I saw a lot of oohs and ahs, which is my experience is when I walk with Rudy. So we made him a therapy dog. And we go to care homes. We go to old folks' homes and so forth. Just because my father-in-law had dementia for 2 or 3 years, and we used to take Rudy in, and we just, again, would see the response. So we do it here in Halifax. And one time, Rudy got off leash, ran into a room. So my wife went in. I stood outside talking to the nurse. My wife was in there for 20 minutes, came out. And the nurse said, what were you doing in there? She said, I was talking to Mr. Smith. And she said, he hasn't talked to anyone in a year. She said, well, he just told me his war story, his dog, his family, and so forth, because Rudy jumped up on the bed, started licking his hand and wagging his tail and doing his thing. So that was my first exposure to how you put yourself out to the world is a good chunk of what you get back. Then I started noticing we'd go to Point Pleasant Park, and someone would be walking towards me like this, and they would look up and see Rudy, and they would just start laughing and going, oh my God, because his whole back end goes, and he's got a huge howl when he gets excited and rubs up against people. So I noticed that I could see someone coming towards me probably at about a 2 out of 10, and Rudy would give them about a 4 out of 10, because they would be walking away, and I would notice standing up taller, a little brighter, a little happier, and all those types of things. What I also noticed for us with my wife is bringing play back into our life. So we would be home 7 o'clock, 7:30, tired, exhausted, and all of a sudden, here comes Rudy. He's up, and he's kneeling in front of us on the couch doing this, which means I want to go downstairs and play. He starts stomping his feet, saying, let's do it. So we'll go, oh, all right, let's go. So down the stairs we go. In a matter of a half hour, my wife and I are laughing, literally laying on the floor with the dog with his hands up in the air. I've got my hands up in the air. My belly's getting rubbed. His belly's getting rubbed. And for the next 2 hours, we're charged up. Where we probably would have sat there, watched CNN, get depressed watching that stuff, as opposed to going downstairs. So Rudy's not going to be with us forever, but I think we'll always go downstairs and throw the tuggy around. It'll be entertaining that I'm doing it, but we're going to keep that fun in our life, or what gets our juices growing and glowing. The last thing I'll say is 2 years ago, Rudy got the leptovirus, which was going around and was quite an outbreak. And yet again, I saw his resilience. So even that morning where we weren't sure what he'd have, he still tried to walk at the park, and then he came home and just flopped, and then spent 8 days in the ER and was on 3 different antibiotics, 2 pain medications, 2 stomach medications. Didn't think he was going to make, that's why we call him New Kitchen now, as opposed to Rudy, because it's not free healthcare for dogs. But he fought through it, and he was a little trooper. So they would take him off the IV and bring him out, because we would go over every night. We were those dog people. We would be sitting in the waiting area, and all of a sudden he would come in, and his back end would do about 3 waggles. He'd look at us, kind of do a little howl, and then flop on the floor. We'd have to pick him up and take him. But he survived that, and it was a great how we used our battery charges to make it through that time. It was make sure she got her sleep. When we made it through all that, we also took some time to recover, which was important. So we didn't all of a sudden go, okay, Rudy's better, now let's go back to all this other stuff. I said, you're sitting at a 2 out of 10, let's take some time to recover. So, moral of the story, know where your battery's at, know how to get it up, be okay with it came down, because it happens sometimes, and have a great rest of the year. I hope you got to take something away from today, because I'm getting this one.